This video is going to have a look at learned behaviour. You're going to find out what habituation is, what operant and classical conditioning is, and how it can be used to train animals. The first thing we're going to look at then is habituation. Now, although innate behaviour helps animals to respond appropriately, it's not the only thing, and there are some behaviours that animals need to learn. A key example of that is the prairie dog. Basically, habituation means getting used to something. So, for example, the first time prairie dogs saw humans, they ran away. But then when they realised that it wasn't harmful, they quickly got used to them and now are quite comfortable around humans. Another example of this is how crows eventually learn to ignore scarecrows because they don't harm the bird themselves. And another example is the sea hare, a kind of slug type thing that lives in the water. It has a gill that sticks out from its back, and if it's touched suddenly it will withdraw that gill. However, if you keep doing that, it eventually stops withdrawing the gill because it knows that it's not in danger. The next thing we're going to have a look at then is classical conditioning, and we're going to do that with the example of dogs and how they respond to food. So classical conditioning basically is where an animal responds to a stimulus, responds to something that it's been trained to do. So an example of that is hearing the word walkies and wanting to go for a walk. The most famous example though is one that Ivan Pavlov discovered. Now he noticed in the 1930s that dogs produce saliva when they smell food, and he wanted to investigate whether dogs could learn to respond to other stimuli in the same way. So he did this by ringing a bell every time just before food was ready. The dog would prick its ears up, but think nothing more of it, smell the food, and start to produce saliva. He would continue doing this, and then eventually, when he rang that bell, the dog would produce saliva regardless of whether the food was there, because it knew food was coming. The next type of conditioning then is something called operant conditioning. Now, operant conditioning occurs when an animal discovers that a particular kind of behaviour can make something good happen. One of the key ways that they discovered this was by training a rat. Now, they put the rat in a room with a really bright light which the rat found painful, but they also put a button that would turn it out. The rat would push this button by mistake and it would go out, but eventually it would learn that by continuing to push that, the light would go out, so eventually it was trained to turn the light off. Okay, the final part of this video then is going to have a look at how this can be used to train animals, and one of the key examples is how animals can be used in the police. So when a sniffer dog is trained, it's given an object with a smell to sniff. It will then be presented with several objects with various smells, and then when it indicates the one with the original smell, it will be rewarded. After it's done this quite a few times, it will learn to look out for a particular smell. Other examples of this involve dolphins that have been trained to locate mines so they can be cleared, police horses being repeatedly exposed to smoke so they find that nothing bad happens so it doesn't freak them out, doesn't make them afraid, training guide dogs to stop at the side of the road to wait for a command, and training police horses only to respond to commands from their in particular rider.